Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Connect, president of Universal Accounting Center. We have on the show each and every week experts to help us actually work on our businesses, help us become the leaders we need to do or be, and at the same time offer quality accounting services and get paid what we're worth. So each and every week I bring on the experts to actually enlighten us on things that we need to be considering as we're running our companies. And today's going to be no exception to that. I've got someone that I'm excited to speak with. It's Michael Levin. Michael happens to be someone that you're going to want to know as it relates to writing books. How do you get people to actually trust you when they do not even know you? If you aren't a thought leader, how do you actually change that and not become a commodity? There's no middle ground, and the most powerful, exciting, and fun way to rescue yourself from the commodity trap is to have a book of your own. Our guest today is the New York Times best-selling author and world's most experienced ghostwriter, Michael Levin, who is responsible for the writing, editing, planning, and publishing of more than 1,000 books over a 30-year career. Today, Michael is going to talk about how to get your own book done quickly and easily, even without employing a ghostwriter. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Roger, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
This is going to be a lot of fun. So I've been involved with writing books. I've written 2 of my own recently. So this is going to be exciting because a lot of times in my career, I had individuals talking about the value of writing a book and how it can propel you to being that expert. So this is going to be a great topic. But before we dive into it too much further, I want to get a little bit of your story, your history. What was it that put you in a position of becoming a ghostwriter? Ghostwriter implies that you're writing for someone else. I mean, that's kind of interesting. So let's first define ghostwriter. And then I'd like to get a little bit of a story as to how it got to where you are today, owning this business and running it as you have.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, ghostwriter is somebody who writes books for other people as a service and is in the shadows. Co-author means that it's by you and me. Ghost is by you, and I'm nowhere to be found. My name is not on the book. It's not on the copyright line. It's just on a check. And so that's okay. I've had my name on lots of books, which is great. And I'm very happy to provide this service for people. And that's what a ghost does. That's what a ghost is. What we do is we basically listen. And the way I approach it is I start off by saying, okay, who's the audience? Who are we trying to influence? Where are they now? Where do you want to take them? And what's in your head that would convince people in that group to move from where they are to hiring you or referring you or something, whatever you want. And then we just interview and kind of go from there. So those are the basics.
I love it. One of the things that I thought was very interesting when I became acquainted with ghostwriting is they're basically taking what someone feels, believes, thinks, and they're putting it to paper. They're articulating it. They're asking the right questions and getting that story or narrative because the individual doesn't feel confident writing it themselves. And yet that ghostwriter just has that skill to really draw out of the individual what needs to be written, and they write it for the audience, as you mentioned. So it's good. It's however, a very selfless act other than you get paid in the sense that nobody knows you're there. It's just not something celebrated. So what got you into this career, just to give it some context?
Sure. I'm a lawyer by training, went to Columbia Law School, worked for 2 firms in Boston, each for about 5 months until they kind of figured me out and they realized I didn't want to be there. And one of them all but fired me. One of them sat me down and fired me. And I sold 3 novels to Simon & Schuster at the same time. This is when I was in my mid to late 20s. And they were getting phenomenal reviews in the New Yorker and the New York Times and People and all such things like that, which is very exciting, but you can't put reviews on a deposit slip. And I ran out of money. I couldn't sell the 4th novel, and eventually met a person who became my mentor for 29 years. And he sat me down in a Dunkin' Donuts. He said, I've worked with a lot of you creative people, and you guys cannot do your best work when you cannot put bread on the table or pay your rent. So he showed me how to offer writing classes. He said, you're going to offer writing classes privately, and it's going to take 20 hours a week, and you're going to have the other 20 hours a week for your own work, for your creative work. And we're going to figure out how much you need to live on, and therefore how much you need to make an hour. And these were all just totally foreign concepts to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have known a balance sheet from a Pythagorean, whatever they are. And I'm not Mr. Numerate over here, unlike your audience. So I'm a word guy.
Uh-huh.
So I started offering the classes, and I was doing guerrilla marketing before guerrilla marketing was a thing. I was putting my flyers everywhere they would take them. I found there was a correlation between people who had dry cleaning done and people who wanted to take writing classes. So I really favored the dry cleaners.
I love it.
They're either standing around for a few minutes and they've got a few bucks, so they wouldn't need dry cleaning, so they can afford it. And little by little, I filled up those classes and more classes. And then people started saying, will you consult with me? And then people started saying, why don't you just write it for me? So I literally backed into this career. And as you said, it's more than 1,000 books since then. I haven't written 1,000 books, but I've been involved one way or another, writing, planning, editing, publishing, in a few cases, agenting books, whatever needs to be done. So, I was just sort of talking about with my sister this morning about it. We were talking about, I still haven't gotten used to the fact that I don't have a job, and I haven't had a job or a paycheck since, my gosh, since my last firing, which would have been in 1986.
Not to date yourself, right?
Yeah, as I like to say, I'm dating myself, but I'm not sleeping with myself.
There you go.
Thank you. But rim shot. But the serious point is that, like your listeners, I run a business. I have a team, and I've had to learn to become a business owner because I had no particular business skills. I went for sales training. I went for marketing training. I went to the Disney Institute for Customer Service.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, I did everything I could to learn how to become I go to Strategic Coach, which is a great program for entrepreneurs. And little by slow, I learned how to run a successful ghostwriting business. And here I am, Roger, talking to you. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about your story is the fact that you obviously have an entrepreneurial drive within you. In your 20s, you got fired from 2 different places, and from that launched into this. And you started to realize that although you had a skill, a talent, it's kind of like Gerber, he explains in E-Myth, the idea that you're a technician having this entrepreneurial seizure, which is the quote everyone uses, which is simply to say you're great at a certain skill, but you've got to monetize it. You got to turn it into a business model. You've got to determine how can you take this to the masses and get people to see value in your services, that they're willing to pay you for what you're doing. And that's a journey. And you, over time, learn how to do it better and better and service your clients where they're at and take care of them, and obviously provide value, that there's a good exchange for what it is you're providing. So as a ghostwriter, one of the things that I think is very valuable here before we get started is the fact that I do believe everyone has a story. I do believe that everyone has something of interest. The problem is how do you take it and write it in a compelling way? And I've been fortunate to know a number of people, especially in the accounting industry, that have very good things to share. They have something that they want to put to paper. And it oftentimes takes someone like yourself, a ghostwriter, that can really pull that out and organize it in a way that it's in kind of a book form, chapter form, something to be written, because this isn't an autobiography. That's typically not a novel or a fiction type thing. It's more typically a business self-help, type book. And what we're trying to do is write it in a way that's not only entertaining, because there's some books out there that are written from a business context, that, like Rich Dad Poor Dad with Kiyosaki, he writes it in a story narrative teaching business principles, and that's a nice approach to it. But there's also just kind of how-to books. I might be getting off into the weeds here, but would you agree that there are different styles that can be used to tell a certain narrative?
Yeah, absolutely. And you just made a lot of really important points. Michael Gerber has been a friend and mentor and referral source for years and years. And I love Michael. And he's also not shy about telling you when you're totally, totally wrong.
Your system's messed up.
Yeah, I mean, you better have some fireproof shorts on when you go sit down with him, because he's blunt. He'll get right to the point. But when you're doing a book, there are multiple ways to do it. But the starting point is to think about the fact that readers are people with problems. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, what problem do you like to solve the most, and for what audience? Or as they say in Strategic Coach, whom do you want to be a hero to? Mm-hmm. And we don't want to be wandering generalities, because then our marketing is really just hope, and hope is not a strategy. Just hoping somebody will come along and hire us instead of the other 6 people they're interviewing. So the question really starts off, as you said, how can you get people to trust you when they don't know you? And I find the way that's most effective to do that is to show that you solve a particular large problem for a certain class of individuals or businesses, and that you do it really, really well, and you do it thoughtfully and compassionately and intelligently and successfully. And when you demonstrate that in the first chapter, when you show the reader this sense of, I'm reading your mail, I know what you worry about late at night, I understand you, I get you, I see you, and I see the problems you have, and good news, I solve those problems, they're going to sit up and take notice, and they're going to then ask, who is this person? And that's when you start talking about yourself in chapter 2. A lot of people make the mistake of authors of starting off talking about themselves, the history of the industry. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. All they care about is themselves and their own problems. You can call it selfishness. I just call it natural self-interest.
Hmm.
And you got to appeal to that. And you can do it in the form of a nonfiction book, a business book, or you can do it in the form of a business fable. I love writing fables. I've done a lot of fables for people in financial services. And that's a very, very effective way. People love stories. Stories are sticky. You know, I had a client who was a consultant to the dental industry, and I said to him, you know, and that might sound boring, but not to him and his clients. I
Yeah.
said to him, you know, what keeps your clients up at night? And he just went off on a list of stuff. So I created an imaginary dentist named Dr. Larry Laser Guy, DDS. And Larry's kind of a jerk, but the thing is that he's got all the problems that most dentists have. And so chapter 1 of his book is called A Day in the Life of Larry Laser Guy, DDS. And from the time he gets up and he's driving to the office in a 7 Series that isn't paid for, and 2 paychecks in his back pocket because he can't cash them because he doesn't have the cash flow, and you know, and on and on and on. By the time you get to the end of the chapter, you say, "Oh my gosh, this author understands me better than anybody." So that's a long answer, but that's what you're shooting for. Show them that you solve their problems, and they're gonna they're gonna trust you, and you're gonna own them.
So, with that understanding, why do business people want to write a book or should write a book? What does the book accomplish as it relates to, yeah, I've got something to share. I've got a process that I can document. I can identify with my customers. But why write the book, though? I mean, all those things may be very true, but why go through the effort, the time, the energy, the money to write the book?
Yeah. Well, the short answer is that there's a thing called the commodity trap. And it used to be that buyers could only buy services or goods typically from a 5-mile radius around their house, which meant that in this case, the only accounting service they could use would be somebody who had an office nearby. And it never occurred to anybody to hire somebody out of town, out of state, out of the country. But what the internet does is that it turns everybody into a possible seller. And so now buyers have more choices than ever. It's no longer you and the other 19 accountants in your city or town. It's you and every accounting firm on the planet. You're going up against all of them. And what the internet does is it commoditizes us. And then what we do is we tend to commoditize ourselves further. Roger, I don't want to insult your audience, but in my experience, a lot of people in accounting really don't like marketing. And they kind of look at marketing as a nasty obligation. It's just something it's a box they have to check. And their websites look like all their competitors. They have the standard stock photo of the 6 nicely dressed, ethnically mixed young people shaking hands over a glass table. Nobody knows what that means, but it's on everybody's website, and all the websites look alike. So the internet wants to turn you into a commodity, and then we finish the job by commoditizing ourselves in terms of our go-to-market. We don't look and it's not just true for accountants, it's true for most professionals, lawyers, doctors, financial services professionals. Everybody kind of wants to avoid standing out. Everybody's afraid to do that. And my answer is, if you do a book, all of a sudden you're an author. When you're an author, you're an authority. When you're an authority, you're not a commodity. And now you're able to charge the higher fees that you are entitled to as a result of your knowledge base and your experience. And otherwise, you're in a race to the bottom in terms of competing on pricing. And competing on pricing never has a happy ending. So the short answer is, you do a book because otherwise you will be perceived in the marketplace as a commodity. And you would do a book to show what makes you distinctive. And you do a book to show what people you like to work with and what problems you like to solve, so that you are sort of putting it out there into the universe. This is who I am. This is who I serve. This is what I like to do. And those people know to come rushing to you.
Well, I definitely will agree with the idea that from a marketing point of view, it does distinguish you, it differentiates you as an expert. That's one of the key things that I have found to be true, and more importantly, have seen in others. Once you write a book, it opens a lot of doors. I mean, there's a lot of invitations that come for speaking engagements, invitations to be a guest on a podcast, all that basically stem from the fact that I'm an author, I've written a book, and that one act is one that just unlocks so many opportunities. And so definitely want to suggest writing the book, only because it's one of those marketing methods that not many people leverage, but it's a differentiator for you if and when you choose to use it. So in writing the book, I've got a few quick questions here that I'm sure we can just kind of go through. But one of the things is people presume you have to find a publisher. I've got to draft this manuscript, and you go through what people are familiar with, where I'm submitting the manuscript to all these publishers, hoping somebody's going to like it, read it, and say, this is something we want to put on our list. What about independent publishing? What does that look like? Print on demand, that type of a thing.
Yeah, forget New York, forget the traditional publishers. They're really only interested in people whose names happen to be Prince Harry or Michelle Obama. Everybody else basically need not apply. Also, the New York publishers can tell when someone is doing a book in order to build a brand or build a business. And their attitude is, we're not here for that. We're here to take care of people who want to sell massive copies of books, who have 1 million followers on social media, who are doing weekly appearances. They're the baby doctor on the Today Show, so they're already on TV, and they're doing 50 major keynotes a year. How people like that have time to develop new ideas, I don't know. And in fact, they don't. So that's the problem with the New York publishing industry. Independent publishing really is fantastic because you control the process, you control the cover design, you control when the book comes out. The vendors I use for my clients typically are published within 60 days of finishing their manuscripts, not a year and a half later. And then they keep all the money. If you go to New York and somehow you get a deal and you want to sell copies back of the room at a speaking engagement, New York will happily sell you those copies at 40% off. So let's say your book sells for $30. And now I'm doing math in front of accountants. So this is not a good feeling.
Do $10. Do $10. 40% of $10 would be $4.
Okay, fine. So I mean, I think it's $12. I think 40% off 30 is 12.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
I appreciate that. The thing is that I just wanted to demonstrate where the real money is. So forgive me, but if a book costs 30 and you sell back of the room for 30, the New York publisher gets 18, and you get 12. Mm-hmm. But if you print it yourself, you print them for 3. And you sell them for 30, and you put $27 in your pocket. You're making more than double what you would if you had a New York. And then let's say there's some new law that comes out, or some change in the tax code in your state or in the United States, and you want to do a new edition of your book. You can do a second edition of your book a month after your first edition comes out. It's really simple and easy. Your book, it's easy to. My vendors put all our books up on Amazon, which means that if somebody says, how can I find your book? Or if you do media, well, my book's on Amazon. There's a lot of credibility in that. It says on your website, here's the book cover, download a free PDF version, available on Amazon. People are like, whoa, that's pretty cool. This person really rocks.
Yeah.
So with independent publishing, you have time, you have freedom, you have control. And I mean, I literally have a vendor who can publish books as ebooks and paperbacks for $450. And then I've got somebody who does a really, really outstanding job for $8,500. And I've got somebody who can get you Simon & Schuster distribution into brick and mortar bookstores, but that's a whole lot more, and who needs it? And they can even get you airport bookstores. So which is basically a billboard for your books. All of that's bought and sold. So you just buy as much publishing as you need. But the short of it is, don't even bother with New York. Don't even worry about agents or submissions or anything like that. You're simply buying publishing services from a publishing vendor. And your readers, whether they use me or not for anything, are welcome to reach out, and I'll put them on the path toward not getting ripped off, because there's so many entities out there that just take horrible advantage of first-time authors. So if you're about to publish a book, just drop me a note and I'll give you some good people to talk to. I don't get a commission. I don't get anything. I just get the karma and the satisfaction of knowing that your book is going to be published effectively and for a fair fee.
Yep. I love it. I love it. So let's talk about ghostwriting. We talked earlier about what that is and so forth. So, what do ghostwriters do that help write the book that really makes it easier for that writer who's trying to get something on paper? Because really, what's happening here is you gave earlier chapter one, chapter two. There's a process. There's a system. There's a turnkey process that can be followed. Kind of a way of writing a book, and the ghostwriter is very familiar with that. How does the ghostwriter then facilitate getting the author, let's say, to divulge what's going on and then putting it in a legible format that a reader would enjoy to look at?
Well, I will say this: if you're going to hire a ghostwriter, don't give him or her yes or no answers. Because I can't write a book off a yes.
Yes.
Or, and I had one client say, "Oh, that's a really interesting point. Can you give me an example of one of your clients where that?" So, no. Okay.
Doesn't help, does it?
No. So you got to help us help you. But the short of it is that most people don't like to write. Even people who like to write, it's typically not the highest and best use of their time to lock themselves away for months and bang out a book. It's your clients' pay time consists of getting new clients, serving current clients, doing what they do. It's not about locking themselves in the study for any number of hours. The way we do it is we take the burden of writing and of organizing and of time off of our clients' hands. I only need an hour to interview somebody to get enough material for a 12 to 15 page chapter. And we believe in shorter books because people's attention spans have shriveled because of technology and social media.
Yeah.
So you give us 10 hours, that's 120 to 150 pages of book right there. That's all we need. That's all. If you cannot close a reader on you on using you and your company, your services in 120, 125, 150 pages, you're not going to get them in 250 pages. It's no longer biggest book wins. I mean, your really older viewers may remember Sylvia Porter's Money Book or any of the big, the really big financial tomes that people had in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. All that's history. All that's history today. People just want the answer. They just want to know they found the right person. They don't want to become educated in accounting. All I want to know about my accountant is that he's good at it. That's all I care about. I don't want to know. I don't want to be educated in the nuances. I took a year of tax at law school. That puts me way ahead in terms of client knowledge. But the thing is that I don't know anything. What I learned was, how coal subsidies happen, because my professor in tax happened to do coal subsidies for a living before he became a professor. There's not a lot of use for, coal subsidies in New York today. We don't manufacture much coal. But so all I'm saying is that I don't know how I got on that. Pull me out of there. But the short of it,
Yeah. Do the short, and then I'm going to pull you out.
Yeah, the short of it is that the short of it is that it's just not a great use of your time if you're running a business to write your own book. And the other thing is that God bless elementary school teachers, because they work so hard, but they inadvertently convince 99% of their students that they don't know how to write. Because, a kid turns in third or fourth grade, turns in an essay or story, and they're waiting to get the pat on the head. Great job, Billy. And then the thing comes back swimming in red ink. What does the kid say? Oh, I don't know how to write. I'm not a good writer. And they take that into adulthood. Now, that's how I make a living, because everybody's been traumatized by their elementary school teachers. But the short of it is that you're probably better than you think you are. And then the question is, unless you have a process for doing it, how do you know what to write? As you said, what's the turnkey system? What goes in what chapter? How do you organize? How do you do a call to action at the end of the book to attract the right people to your practice? Those are things that I've done and we've done in my company over and over and over. And trying to just go up that learning curve by yourself is just not the highest and best use of your time.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, because I think what you're describing there is something that not only will my audience relate to and perhaps understand, but it's something I've experienced. For years, I was told, write a book, and I heard it. I knew I needed to. I knew that there would come some time when I would. And fortunately, last year I wrote 2 books, and one of the things that I experienced was I had to reverse engineer it. I first had to do, like you were sharing earlier, first identify my audience. Who's who's going to read this? Why would they want to read this? And then once I determined who the audience was, I needed to realize, okay, what are they going to get out of the book? I need to be very clear in my own mind, what's the intent of the book, such that when they're finished, what's changed for them? What new epiphany have they had? What takeaway are they getting? And then realizing that, it was easy to come up with the outline of, okay, how's the narrative going to work towards that aim? And what's interesting is in this process, it becomes a lot more clear who you're going to market the book to, who's the intended, ideal client, if you will. And all of a sudden, it's basically reverse engineering what it is you're going to do that makes this all make sense. Because until somebody could get me to see that, I couldn't just sit down and start writing. I had to have some clarity as to what this was all about. But that leads me to my next question, which is what you just ended on, which is there's a time commitment. And a lot of the people that may be listening are saying, this sounds great and wonderful. In fact, I've got a great idea, but there's a time commitment to this. How do you address the time commitment?
Yeah, the starting point is that you want to write the right book, and the right book is the one that's going to do what I call CPR, and CPR stands for cash in your pocket right now. That's CPR. That's the book you want to write, because if you've been active as a professional in your field for 10, 20, 30, whatever number of years, there are multiple books you could do right now. So
Yeah.
the question becomes, what's the one that's going to be most beneficial to you? And typically, it's the one that is going to attract the kind of people you like serving and the kind of problems you like handling. So the first thing you have to do before you, and you were correct to do this, before you write word one, is to decide, who am I writing to? And as I said earlier, what problems do they have that I like to take away? I have a process for teaching writing, and in it, I show people how to create an outline, and then basically, instead of doing the writing yourself, have somebody on your team interview you for an hour and just have a conversation about the topic, and then have that transcribed, and then find a smart grad student in a local grad program in your hometown and have that person turn that into a chapter. They'll do it for $150, $200. Do that 10 times, you've got a book. And now you haven't had to put pen to paper. You haven't had to go through all the fear of, oh my gosh, what am I going to write about? And all. You figured that out. You've got an outline, and now you have a process. It's only an hour a week. So whether we're doing the hour a week interview with you, or whether it's somebody on your team or somebody you've hired, have that smart grad student do the interviewing, and just explain, you're standing in the shoes of, and explain who is the ideal reader for your book, and let them interview you. So now an hour goes by, and then they come back 2 weeks later, and here's your chapter. And then you tell them, I like this, I hate that, do more of this, do less of that. That sounds like me, that doesn't. It's what our clients tell us, because we deliver the chapters as soon as they're written, usually within 10 days to 2 weeks of the call. That way we're able to deliver a second to third draft level of quality by the time we're delivering the third or fourth chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And have your person do the same thing. Don't have them do all the interviews and then go off and write the whole thing. Have them write a chapter. Then you'll know immediately, oh, I really like this, or no, this isn't it. And now sometimes it's by seeing what you don't want that you know what you do want. And then you're able to tell your person, here's how I want you to do it. And they go, great. And they're grateful for the guidance, and they go off and hammer away at it. And now you've got a great chapter. And just sort of wash, rinse, repeat through the rest of the book. And that, to me, that's the easiest way to keep your listeners from bogging down and having to, when they waste time, spin their wheels, and do things that are not pay time. That would be my suggestion.
Well, that's good advice. I like that. So that actually brings me to a point now of saying, okay, I'm listening to this, I'm hearing what we're saying, but at the end of the day, why would anyone care what I have to say? Why would anyone want to read what I'm writing? And it kind of comes down to what some may refer to as imposter syndrome, to simply say, what makes me the authority? And it's interesting. You're writing the book oftentimes to become the authority, to be the expert, but you've got to go through this journey of almost acting as if you are the expert to write the book, because some people just question themselves. They create this self-doubt. How do you address that with your authors as they're going through this process of becoming the expert and writing the book?
Yeah, a lot of them do have that issue. Why should I be a writer? There's so many books out there. What I always tell them is that there are people out there that only they can speak to.
Mm-hmm.
There are people out there who are only going to really grasp the message from them. And if they don't publish their book, then they're going to leave all those people in the lurch, because those people will not be served by other people's books. And it may be a big niche of people, maybe a small niche, but there's a niche of people out there. And then this whole thing about, who am I to be an authority? Well, if you aren't an authority, then stop practicing accounting, because your clients are going to end up, in jumpsuits if you don't know what you're doing. So a book does not confer authority on somebody. It demonstrates the authority they already have. Your clients view you as an authority. That's why they come to you with questions. That's why they sign the tax returns you create. And they just do. I mean, I haven't read one of my tax returns in years. I just go to the DocuSign and click.
Yeah.
And it looks like a third grader signed it because the signature. But the thing is that you're already an authority, or you wouldn't be making a living. So the book is not about turning you into an authority. The book is about letting more people know that you already are. And right now, if you depend on referrals, that's great. Wouldn't it be nice if all of the people who refer you had a bunch of copies of your book on their desk? So when somebody comes to one of their buddies and says, "Man, I need a new accountant," say, "Oh, my guy's great." Everybody says my guy's great, or my person's great. My person's great, and here's her book. Here's his book. Changes the whole conversation. What if you could give your book to the lawyers in your community you work with and give them 10 or 20 copies and say, "Call me when you run out." And then, because they've got a lot of people who are selling businesses or getting divorced or doing whatever, who need the specialized accounting services you provide. Well, it's one thing for them to be, a so-called center of influence in your life. It's another thing for them to be actively working for you by distributing your book. Why would they do that? Because they believe in you. So, everybody else believes in you. So maybe it's about time you did. Because the thing is that if people didn't believe in you, you would not be going to the bank, and you would not be keeping your clients. So again, it's so important. You're not creating authority. You're demonstrating the authority you've already created by working for all these years in your field.
I'm loving this. I've got two things to share with regards to this. One is, just a few weeks ago, we had our conference.
Hmm. I apologize. That was on my end. My Wi-Fi cut out.
Nice. Okay. Well, I'm glad we figured out what it was. I didn't know what it was.
Now you know. I'm really embarrassed. Please
No,
forgive
no,
me.
no. You're totally fine. I'm glad you're there. So yeah, I was pontificating there for a moment. So I just kept going. I don't know where you dropped, but I'm going to just pick up where I left off.
Yeah, please.
What I was mentioning is that the co-author that I'd written the book with, he had good deal of success once he sent them. They shared it with their contacts. Birds of a feather flock together. So they have other business owners, gave them the book, and the the engagement process with these potential customers was so much easier simply because he had the posturing of, I'm the author of the book. And so they had a lot of answers already in their minds of his authority, credibility, and so forth. So it made the onboarding experience so much easier for them as he acquired these new clients. But then I mentioned that for me, the experience of writing the book, again, having written a few books now, is in my mind, there's clarity. The thing I'm thinking of makes sense to me. I've got all the nuances all put together. But when you go through the process of now putting it on paper, you have to now articulate it in a way that makes sense to everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how refined that experience becomes. It's amazing to me how my thoughts that made sense to me as I put them on paper actually get challenged, and I have to rethink them and reorganize them to say, okay, this doesn't make sense this way. Okay, this is a better way to communicate that. And it's a great exercise for me. I was already bought in on my idea. It was my idea, right? So I
Yeah.
get it. And I've got all my life and experience that brought me to this conclusion. But to now put it in paper, I've got to now write it out in a way that I can take someone to that same conclusion. And it's a very good, healthy mental exercise to write it down, because I'm already sold on the idea. How do I get other people to come to the same conclusion? And that was a phenomenal experience. Took a lot longer than I expected, but nonetheless, it was a great exercise. So, what would you add to that? I mean, there's two things there. Anything more you'd like to elaborate on there?
A lot of time I've had clients say to me, until you came along, I didn't know what I did, because a lot of people don't really have a process.
Yeah.
And clients love it when you have a clear process and steps, and they know exactly where they are and exactly what's happening. And if they're waiting for you to get back, they know that it's going to be 5 to 7 days or whatever the thing is. So a book is a great sort of clarification process for identifying how you serve. So that's all I would say to that. I think you're absolutely right.
Very good. Very good. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of wrap this up and kind of put a little bow on it, because I think this has been a phenomenal conversation. I was very excited for it, and I'm glad we've had it. So the first thing I'd like to point out to my listeners is, in the episode description, Michael is very kind to actually provide information regarding a course that he has that's in reference to helping individuals self-write books. And it's basically a course that's intended to give you the step-by-step process for that. So I encourage you to go to the episode description and actually find out more about what that looks like, if in fact you've got within you that curiosity to write a book. In addition, I'm going to have you go to the episode description, because I likewise have some information regarding the story I went through, my journey as it was writing a book and what that looked like. And really in there, I kind of document my purpose as to how I came to the conclusion that now is the time to write the books and what I would do with it. So if you're interested in knowing those things, go to the episode description. There you will find more information about this idea of writing a book. Because if you're like me and you've heard numerous times that you should be an author, by all means, this is something you should take a little bit of time to look into and understand a lot more about. Now, the other thing I'd like to do as a summary is just kind of point out, Michael, great story in the sense that early in his 20s as a lawyer, found himself being fired or let go twice, and really started this path of becoming a writer. And I liked how at the beginning we pointed out that even though he had the skills to write the book, he needed to go through the process of learning how to run a business. And I think that's something that as entrepreneurs we should really appreciate. I'm really grateful for the fact that he pointed out that he got the mentoring, the advice that he did, because I think so often we each get that same type of experience. Somebody comes in, sits us down, and gives us, hey, you need to be considering this as you're running your company. I think that's something that we all need to be doing more of. And whether it be consisting of mentors or business coaches, great advice there. As it relates to writing the book, we covered topics as to what is a ghostwriter, why someone would want to use someone like that, why would someone want to independently publish versus working with a publishing house. And then the other thing that I think is very helpful is just understanding the importance of the book, that it does position you as an expert. It does open doors for you as it relates to marketing. It does help you from the standpoint of getting clients merely because they see you as that authority. So a lot of great things here that I think that were very, very important to understand as it relates to why someone would want to write a book. And I'm just going to end with the idea of, I think each of us have a story to tell. I think each of us, as Michael pointed out, as accountants, we are experts. Why don't we have something to say that would resonate with our clients that will help them where they are? And I think that's something that we all need to hear, is at some point we need to have that self-actualization, that we need to leave a legacy, write it down, and leave our story. It's our let's say, our fingerprint on our own narrative. So with that being said, excellent little summary of things. Michael, what would you like to end with and leave as your final thought?
Yeah, Roger, I really appreciate you. I appreciate your viewers taking the time to watch. And the main thing is that it's time to stop being a commodity if you've been one. It's time to honor the knowledge and experience that is hard won, that is yours. And it's time to stand up there and say, this is who I am, and I'm here, and this is how I serve. And if I can help you, I'll be happy to, without any imposter syndrome, without any fear, and just with an absolute heart for the people we're serving, because that's why we're, one of my mentor figures had on his business card, God divided man into men that they might help each other, and that's how I go through life, and that's what I believe. So thank you.
Excellent. I love that summary and that little last thought. So here's what I'm going to do. All of the listeners, if you haven't already, I want to invite you to actually subscribe to the podcast. Do so, subscribe, and in so doing, set the notifications so that you get notified each and every week when we release a new episode. In addition to the podcast, I also want to point out that we've put together a number of playlists or highlight reels that you can actually go and listen to based on topics as they relate to your current situation, whether you're wanting information as it is regarding marketing, selling, pricing, tech stacks, mental health. We've put together a variety of ones that you can dive deep into, hearing from the experts. Just go to universalaccounting.com, and there in the podcast section, you'll find the highlights. And that's something that I would highly recommend you do for some binge listening. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is actually join us for GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference where we get together with the experts, putting them on the stage and allowing them to share their advice, their insights as it relates to building the premier accounting firm in your area. What you want to do is join us for that conference. Also, with regards to attending, you get to interact with your peers, make some phenomenal connections, actually collaborate with other individuals, and most importantly, get some friendships that you need to continue on the work that you're doing. It's very inspiring to see what others have accomplished, and it's there that we celebrate those. And then lastly, you do get to meet this team of Universal Accounting, those individuals that are committed to your success to help you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal Accounting. The other thing I want to point out is if you'd be interested in any of these topics that we've covered in the show, before we go, feel free to give us a call or reach out to us online. You can call us at 801-265-3777, or you can visit us at universalaccountingschool.com. Why? Because accounting success is universal. Take care. Have a great day and be safe out there, everyone. Perfect, Michael. That's a wrap.
Roger, fantastic. It was my pleasure. Great questions, and I had a great time, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your professionalism, and I'm ready to record the record the promo.
Perfect. It is your stage to do it.
Okay. Do I mention the websites here, or do I save that for the?
No, you could if you want, but in the episode description, that's typically where the people will find them, because they don't have to write down. The promo is merely just your thoughts as it relates to the conversation we had. So it's your name, an adjective that you'd like to use to explain the experience, the title of the show, and then just a summary of your thoughts as it relates to the conversation. And then you just end with the invitation to join us.
You got it. Okay. Let's do it. Hey, this is Michael Levin. It was my pleasure my really awesome pleasure to record with Roger an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discussed how books help build your business and how it's time to stop being a commodity in the marketplace and start charging what you're really worth, and raising your fees and getting people to pay those higher fees because you're solving the problems that you enjoy solving the most for the clientele that you enjoy working with the most. And all that happened because you put a book of your own out into the world. So if that sounds intriguing, I invite you to listen and join us.